Inma, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here.
Fantastic. So listen, I want to understand, first of all, what got you excited and interested at an early age in technology? Was it at an early age, in fact?
No, it wasn't as an early age. Well, I do remember having an Atari when I was little and playing with a chess game called Commodore. So I was familiar with machines that were doing stuff. I never gave them any second thought. Um, I do recall that I was a child, extremely creative. I used to write, paint. I used to dance for many years. So I was someone not really put in a box by my parents. We were allowed to just do and explore whatever we wanted. The first time I came across tech was when I was in banking. Goldman Sachs in the early 90s was a bank super obsessed with IT. In fact, where I started with them, which was Zurich, the bank, because we were transforming an institutional sales office into a Swiss bank, completely built the entire IT proprietary. So we had incredible people that came to us from Silicon Valley, from Sun Microsystems, the famous Bob LeBlanc. And I started in the IT department. And then I moved into the front of the house, into the business. And I remember using browsers like Alta Vista and email and intranets and interwebs. So in 1992, not many people were doing those things. So I became accustomed to having tech being a tool. And I loved it. And my friends in the IT department, even when I came down into the trading floor as an analyst, they still came and installed things in my machine. I was one of those people like, what have you found out? I was like, this is really cool. And so I had an interest. It's only that when I decided to leave banking, at the time I was in infrastructure finance. And I was managing many sectors: oil and gas, water projects, construction, and telecoms. And when I decided that I was not going to be a banker anymore, that I was going to move into a client side, I then looked at all the sectors, and very clinically, I realized that the telecoms world was a sector growing at 5 times multiple from the others. And I thought, that's where I'm going. So it was a conscious decision to move to a telecom company. When I arrived at Cable and Wireless, because I entered the strategy team with a new CEO, an American CEO that came to completely kickstart and transform many things, he allowed me to choose any part of the company strategy that I wanted. And I chose the internet. And because in 1997, the internet was nowhere to be found in Europe, the only .coms were American websites, nobody wanted it. I was a young girl, and yeah, she could do it. Nobody fought for that.
Wow.
And that is why the super tech of this life landed on my lap. And I became obsessed with the internet. I became obsessed. I loved it. Cable and Wireless trained me as a telecoms engineer in Coventry at their campus. So I then learned how to be an engineer. And the more I learned, the more I loved it. And it became my passion and my drive. And I left the firm because I saw the mobile opportunity. I was reading the famous Mary Meeker Morgan Stanley equity report on the European internet. And there was a tiny, tiny paragraph that said, Ericsson, Motorola, and Nokia are working on a new data protocol called Wireless Access Protocol, the famous WAP.
Oh, yes.
which will make mobile handsets receive and send data at 56 kilobytes per second. That was the only mention of the mobile internet. But because I was an engineer, I knew what 56 kilobytes per second is the speed of a modem, is a fax. And I saw the light. I was like, what? Images on a phone? text on a phone, this is going to be massive. And I then picked up the phone, found out who at Nokia, Ericsson, and Motorola Europe were running WAP. I got myself in from cable and wireless, and I became part of the people that created the protocol, that began to get together and thinking about what kind of services should go onto phones. I was there. My goodness, I was there. And that really put me in an incredible springboard to then leave the firm and build the first AI system for personalization of mobile services. So it was being at the right time, at the right moment, but also I have a massive curiosity for life and for things. I like to dig. And I was like, what is this thing? Who's doing what? And, it's my nature. I eventually, at my age, I realized I've always been a scientist because I have the type of mentality and the attitude that scientists have. I ask questions. I never leave anything unanswered or uninvestigated. I love science because science is part of life. It's about how we perceive and understand life and the universe. It's the most beautiful discipline. It has nothing to do with math or things. Science is life. It's only that schools make it incredibly tedious and very badly structured for a young person to fall in love with science. So I fell in love with science as an adult.
And you're so passionate about it. You're still absolutely in love with it, which is wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So tell me about, in the introduction, I refer to you as being recognised as one of Europe's biggest talents in digitalisation, which is not easy to say, and human behaviour by Fortune and Time. So congratulations. What does that mean? How did you get that accolade?
So in the early 2000s is when the world began to ask around, what is this digital tsunami? How are people going to buy things on the internet? Isn't that dangerous? What about security? What about the credit cards being stolen? The whole thing. And because I was an active participant, I was one of those people that built the internet. I used to be asked a lot of these questions in the media, at conferences, and Fortune and Time picked that up. And I remember being interviewed for their magazines and for Business Week and many others. And I remember on those days, I used to go a lot into CNBC to talk about, the .com and the .bomb and everything else. And apparently what I was saying was very smart things. So they liked it, and they found that my message and how I analyzed things and how I provided, clear answers, it was something that they could understand and they could grasp. I was a strategist. I mean, I came to the industry having worked in a house like Goldman Sachs, in the banking industry, and then in a massive telco in a strategy team. Of course, I knew how to explain complicated things and make them understandable, and also create a framework with pros and cons and what could people should do. So my thought is very, very structured because I have that training. And then since then, I've always been open to collaborate with media, and my work as a speaker has moved towards more and more of this kind of discourse, like, what is happening? What can we do? Is this a good thing, or is this an opportunity? And that's the typical keynote that normally big corporates ask of me. Or when I go on TV, I was 2 weeks ago in a TV studio talking about fake videos. What's going to happen? So is these new, for me, the new things that nobody knows too much, but everybody's panicking, is what lands on my lap.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love the fact that you said, is this a good thing or is this an opportunity? Most people would say, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? But you're so optimistic and positive that for you, it's a good thing or it's an opportunity. So I love that. So tell me, what represents your biggest body of work at the moment?
My biggest body of work, so I do several things. I am a venture partner at a scientific institute called Deep Science Ventures. This scientific institute used to be the Imperial College Technology Accelerator. So the team that used to run it decided in 2017, late 2016, that it should not just be for Imperial College postdocs, it should be for everybody, for any postdoctorate in the world. And what we did is take it out of Imperial and invite young scientists to come and build companies of the future that really respond and they solve real problems. Why am I saying that? Because most of the research and R&D and innovation in academia tends to stay in academia and tends to have a jolly good life asking for grants and asking for grants and asking for grants. We don't like that. I don't like that. I think that scientists have a major responsibility to help build the innovation of the future, not just write papers. And if someone is inventing the next cure for cancer or a biodegradable industrial glue, it should be used in industry. So I do that, and my role is not a day-to-day. So whenever we have projects that use AI, either for simulations or for the creation of new molecules, any AI, I then mentor and supervise the project, which allows me to then do other things myself. So the other things I do is I do a lot of corporate advisory. I do a lot of private keynote speaking for internal or for top senior clients of a given firm. And I get given mandates such as, this is our sector, these are our clients, what are the specific things that you can paint for us in this future of digitalization. So I do a lot of bespoke work as a speaker. And then, because I like AI and I am definitely a scientist, about once or twice a year, I work for a major company as an AI scientist in an AI-driven data-led project. And I've done it for automotive companies, for media companies, for food manufacturers, banks, and that's what I do. And then I am a collaborator of the European Space Agency. I've been for a year working with ESA, with NASA, with SpaceX, and space is an incredibly magical place that is opening new horizons for humanity.
Fantastic. Well, to keep your feet on the ground here before you go into space, I think, because you're very excited about that. Brilliant. So let's talk about data a little bit here. And I mean, data is a huge part of every organization, but you also talk about data-led companies, and you see that there's going to be lots of transformation for them particularly. First of all, could you define for me what is a data-led company? Give us some examples, and what transformations do you see for them?
A data-led company is one that finally has control of the data that they themselves capture from their business operations or their customers, if they are an FMCG, if they are like a company with consumers, or a B2B, their clients. And then every strategic decision, every product innovation decision is derived from what the data is showing to them. So for example, marketing these days is digital. So decisions as to campaigns, branding messages, how those messages should reach consumers, that is a data-led strategy. Product innovation, which is what I do. Back in the days, I'm talking about 20 years ago, when companies were making new products, nobody knew exactly who came up with the light bulb idea. Most of the time it was the design team. There was not the role of a product person. And then sometimes the products were launched and really didn't fit the purpose or didn't fit consumer expectations. In this day and age, when you create innovation, If you're a data-led company, when you design a product, it's because you have consumer data that is already telling you exactly what they want and what color and in what shape and how it's going to come to them. A data-led company builds products based on what the data shows to you, not out of a top hat. So data-led companies are those that their governance, strategy, marketing, product innovation, the way they check, the way they hire people, HR, the human capital, is based on data. Decisions are made from facts, from insights, from business intelligence, not gut feelings or because they want to copy a competitor.
And how is technology transforming that and transforming data and data gathering and data analysis? Is it obviously it must be making it faster?
Oh yeah, I mean, it makes it faster and it also makes it trackable. So in this day and age, because governments, and I do a lot of advisory at the EU Technology Board and here in in Parliament. Well, remember GDPR. You must ask your customers to allow you to have their data. Well, that's nothing for what's coming. So we need to demonstrate that data that we have from consumers or that has come to our power through a third party, we not only treat it, with security and mindfully, like this is private data, we should not allow anyone to hack it, but that when we create anything with it, is for the highest benefit of that consumer. The era of exploiting someone's data or that creating algorithms that actually discriminate people online or actually takes advantage of, for example, mental illness, that is over. Certain major companies in the field are right now freaking out.
I think it's a great thing. I think it's brilliant. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot of disruption ahead. What potentially should we be frightened of? What are the things that worry you about the disruptions and transformations that are coming?
Well, one of the things that concerns me is that when something disruptive comes into the world, it takes about 2 years for the whole media and the participants to actually realize what this thing is exactly. So I'll give you an example. Challenger banks, aren't they cute? All these startups creating gorgeous little apps that have fascinated millennials. And now, Monzo, billion-dollar valuations, incredible, right? These are not banks. They are not banks. They are data companies. What they do is gather data that no one has ever imagined could be attained. They know where I drink my coffee. They know that I go to Itsu for lunch. They do absolutely the microdata of my life as to how I spend my money, my little money. Yeah. It's not a bank the way we used to think banks were, like deposits and withdrawals. Millennials don't have savings. It's not about deposits. This company is a data company. So now when I say those things from stage, people are like connecting the dots, like, yeah, of course they are. Yes. But for 2 years, everybody talks to them about as if they were banks.
Yeah, it's a leap, isn't it? You're absolutely right. And when you say it, it's so clear. And that is a bit scary. Okay. What excites you about the future?
Ooh, so many things. Okay, so
Can you tell us?
Okay, so first of all, the healthcare as we understand it is being completely disrupted. I'll give you 2 examples. Cancer is going to be cured. We already know how, and it's not with chemotherapy. It's actually being very smart, is decoding people's genome and creating bespoke treatments, not killing them with some chemicals. That is
hurrah
hurrah time. second of all, the way that we understand nutrition, certain diseases that nobody could find a cause, like Alzheimer's or irritable bowel syndrome. Finally, science is finding exactly what connection with the human body it is. And for example, we have found that the gut is where the immune system is, and it also affects Alzheimer's patients. So right now, the traditional medicine of, oh, I have a pain in my finger, oh, I'm going to cure the finger, it's completely different. Like, oh, you have a pain in your finger? Have you checked behind your ear? Exactly. These kind of crazy connections. The human body is becoming to show us what an incredible universe it is. And advances will allow for people to stay alive and healthier. And then, obviously, in my world right now, Earth, thanks to the fact that we are in space, Earth is being looked after so much better. So because we have an international space, in orbit, we can see Antarctica, we can discover climate changes, we can see how the oceans are rising or not, we can see crops, we can actually find human trafficking. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah?
Wow.
So our next 10 years are going to be extremely open for disruption, but for the benefit of mankind. And the best thing is that our society will be a lot more ethical, because finally ethics are coming to technology, and the welfare and the care of children online and of elderly people and consumers online not being taken advantage of. All of these things are going to be regulated. And even though, of course, crime does exist and we will have people hacking here and there and whatnot, regulators and governments and people themselves have their eyes a lot wider, more open, and therefore we can prevent much better. So the internet is going to become safer. It's not going to be like what we have been experiencing in the last 8 years that caught everybody like the deer in the headlights. Now we know, and now we know what to do. And especially this new generation, the centennials, everybody's got one of them at home. You know, is your 15-year-old, your 18-year-old, even your 12-year-old. They are smart. They know how to be suspicious online. They know how to leverage from the internet as a place for learning. And it's a generation that grew up with technology and digitalization. And what they want is to work hard and make a future for themselves. One of my areas of research is this generation and how it's coming into the workplace in the digital enterprise. And I'm delighted. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Do you know what? I'm very excited about the future, the next 10 years. Thank you for that. You've made me feel really, really excited about it. Can you share what you're currently working
on? I am working on automotive simulations. So energy in the future is a huge concern. That's why we're building electric cars, and that's why we're trying to reduce our CO2 emissions. So the automotive industry is trying to find ways in which the cars could be made of other materials so that they could weight less and therefore need less propulsion. So they need less fuel. And also they're more crash resistant and better at thermodynamics. And AI is the tool that you use to do all those crazy simulations and then see the car in the wind tunnel and like, oh, friction here. So that's really exciting. I'm a massive eco person, and I am currently looking at clinical trials in space, at zero gravity. Fascinating, but molecules and everything behaves in very different ways. And when you do blood tests, you do them with such almost perfect percentage of not having a mistake. clinical trials in space, the next future. The cosmetics industry, at zero gravity, you achieve faster results and less prone to mistakes. What else am I working? The aftermath of GDPR. Okay, so now that we have consumer data, what is it that we can do? And it's about preventing algorithms to discriminate people and to create, inference profiles, meaning there is not just one profile, but like 10 profiles of you across the internet, and you have no idea that those things exist, and that the internet that you see is different to other people. So you have less choices or different choices. Why should that be? So I am working a lot on the new regulation after GDPR and the famous discriminating algorithms.
Wow, fantastic. I don't know how you fit it all in, actually, Inma. Finally, I would like you to share with us a piece of advice you might give to somebody starting out in speaking, or maybe advice you would have liked to have had when you started speaking for organisations and sharing your expertise, seeing as we're all about the speaking.
I have evolved my speaking, obviously, like 15 years doing this. But I think that sometimes people throw quite a lot of figures and too much data. And at the end of the day, what the audience wants is a narrative and a storyline that they can comprehend, because what they want is to learn something that they can act upon it. So rather than talking about these, magister, concepts that nobody grasps, the famous old speaker of the 20th century was someone trying to show you how smart they are. No, that's not the case. You jump on stage to actually convey attainable things that people can relate to, things that people can connect back to their life, back to their businesses, make it very easy for them to create actions, to go back to the office or to go back in the train and say, you know what, I'm going to do that. That is your mission, to really be an influencer. When people say, oh, influencers on Twitter, to be honest, I don't tweet that much. I don't write blogs. But when I jump on stage, I try to make my message connecting to a reality. I think that's my biggest advice. Make it that it connects to the real world, not that it's a master class.
That is brilliant advice to end on. Thank you so much. That was great fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I loved it. Thank you. Thank you.